Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carrie. This is where I talk about knitting, my tips, my tricks, my opinions, and my preferences. It is October, which means for knitters everywhere, it is Socktober. Woo! Yes! It is that glorious time of year where we start being inundated with brand new sock patterns, perfect for the fall and winter weather ahead of us. Yes, even in Los Angeles, we have a fall and a winter. Today, I'm going to help you get started with your sock project by showing you my two favorite cast-ons for sock knitting. So, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give my video a thumbs up, and let's cast on. As we get started, just a quick note. All the materials that I used today or was used in one of the sock projects that I'm going to be showing you, because of course I'm going to be showing off some of my sock projects, all that can be found down in the description box. Many of these will have affiliate links. Those will be clearly marked. I use affiliate links to help support my channel. If you want to know more about that, just look at my FAQ at knitswhereitsat.com. That, of course, is also linked down in the description box. I'm telling you, the description box is always worth checking out on videos. There's always lots of useful information there for you to look at. Welcome to Socktober. I'm not going to lie, sock knitting is some of my favorite knitting to do. I never thought I'd be a big sock knitter, truth be told. Truth be told, I don't actually love wearing socks, but I love knitting socks. Sock knitting, like all knitting, begins with a cast on. And the kind of cast on that you need for sock knitting can differ from other sorts of projects that you may do. And this all begins with whether you are knitting a sock from the cuff down or the toe up. Many people are avid, dedicated believers in one or the other. They either, theory kind of is in sock knitting that you are either a cuff down person or you are a toe up person. I admit that I am both. I'm totally ecumenical when it comes to toe up or cuff down sock knitting. I think that which one I like to use depends on the stitch pattern that I'm using and what I'm in the mood to do and what kind of heel I want to do. So I am totally ecumenical when it comes to top down and toe up socks, which is why I do have two favorite cast-ons that I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you one for cuff down, and I'm going to show you one for the toe up. If you want to skip around to any part of the video, I do have timestamps down in the description box, but I hope you'll watch the whole video first. All right, so cuff down socks. This sock here probably looks very familiar to you. This is, of course, the sock that you see in my logo on the main title and everywhere. I love this sock. So let's look at the cast on for this sock. And this is kind of dark, so it's hard to see. But for this sock, you'll notice I got this ribbing out here at the top. Most socks begin or end with ribbing, which means for your cast on, you need a cast on that is going to be elastic so it can stretch with the ribbing and then contract back. But socks are a hard wearing item, and you also need this cast on for a cuff down sock to be firm or sturdy, because this is going, if you wear your socks, this is going to get a lot of wear and tear over the years, and you want this cast on to last. So, what is a great cast on that lets it be both elastic yet firm and sturdy? The cast on I really like to use, it's what's called the German twist cast on. So that's what I'm going to show you today. The German twist cast on is actually a variation of the long tail cast on. What the German twist cast on is doing is basically creating a second twist of yarn to the cast on, and that adds a little bit of yarn to the cast on, and that little bit of extra yarn is what gives it more elasticity than the regular long tail cast on. So that's all a German twist cast on is doing. So the German twist cast on, like the long tail cast on, there is actually an English version of this and the continental version. I'm going to show you the continental version of doing the German twist cast on. I think it's easier than doing this the English style way. So it all starts the exact same as a long tail cast on, doing a slingshot position. I am going to use the twist start and bring my needle down. I now have the 4 strands of yarn, 1, 2, 3, 4, that you expect to do when utilizing a long tail cast on. And I have these loops of yarn coming off my thumb. This is a loop of yarn, and a loop of yarn coming off my forefinger. For the long tail cast on, you usually bring your needle over to the left side of your thumb and then up into the loop that's coming off of your thumb like this. That's not what we're going to do for German twist. For German twist, instead, I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to bring it to the left side of my thumb, and I'm going to bring it up underneath both strands 1 and 2. So the needle is underneath both the strands of yarn wrapped around my thumb. What you're going to do is you're going to bring the needle, you're going to bring it towards you again, and dive that needle down through the loop of yarn on your thumb. And now you have this figure 8 occurring, right? There's a figure 8 formed between the needle and your thumb. This is what it's going to look like. All right, so this is the trickiest part of the German twist cast on, because what we want to do is we actually want to open up this loop of yarn that is still on my thumb right now so that I can actually cast on a stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thumb and I'm just going to turn it down like this. All right. So now that figure 8 has been opened up and I have one big loop of yarn. I'm now going to take my needle, I'm going to bring it over to the right side of strand number 3 that's coming off my forefinger, grab it like this, and then bring my needle back down that loop of yarn and up. Notice I now have the figure 8 again. I'm going to take my thumb out, I'm going to tighten down, and I've casted on my first stitch, and I'm ready to do my second stitch. I know, it seems like a lot. I get it, it totally does. We're going to go through it all again. I'm going to do a slow-mo of this so you really see all of the actions. Do not worry. Like I said, the thing about the German twist cast on is it does require a little bit of dexterity, but once you understand all the movements and the rhythm of it, it has a very nice rhythm to it. So let's do this again. Again, we start off just like we would a long tail cast on. I'm going to bring my needle over the left side of my thumb. I'm going to bring the needle up underneath both strands 1 and 2 that is coming off my thumb. I will then take my needle and bring it towards me and then down into that loop of yarn on my thumb and up. I have a figure 8. I take my thumb, I move it down. I then take my needle over to the right side of strand number 3 that's coming off my forefinger, grab that strand of yarn, drag that strand of yarn into that loop. I have reformed my figure 8, thumb out, tighten, and boom, there's my second stitch. You can always go back to the slow-mo to look at it over and over again. And in fact, I will have a timestamp for you so that you can easily click back to that slow-mo whenever you need to. I'm just going to speed up how I'm doing this so you can see what this looks like once you have the whole thing down. Once you've gotten these movements down and you understand everything that's going on, you can see this is not slow at all. I do this very quickly. The hardest part is really getting that thumb turned down so you can open up that loop of yarn. I have done this without turning my thumb down, but the fact is it's easier to do this cast on by opening up that loop. Let's see, how many stitches do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. 20. I want you to just take a look real quick at what this cast on looks like. It is gorgeous. You can see here, you have these slants right here with the yarn, and then you have the purl bumps above, and then you have your stitches. I'll show you on this side as well. Notice you have the slants here, then you have your purl bumps, and then you have your stitches. So this is something about the German twist cast on. It produces a cast on that looks the same on both sides. So besides being beautiful and flexible and everything, the German twist cast on is actually a really good cast on if you're doing a reversible piece. Now, the thing with the German twist cast on, like the long tail cast on, is you do need to estimate a tail of yarn before you cast on your stitches. You can use the same methods to estimate your tail of yarn for German twist as you do for long tail, but because I'm paranoid, and the fact is the German twist does take a little bit more yarn to do than the long tail cast on, the way I like to estimate my tail for German twist is to cast on 10 to 20 stitches. In this case, I have 20 stitches, and once I do, I take those stitches off like this. Then I unravel those cast on stitches. Now I have a length of yarn that represents 20 stitches, and I can mark off however many stitches I need to cast on. So here's 20. Let's say I needed 100. So I need 40. Oops, 60, 80, 100 stitches. So there's my tail for 100 stitches. Whenever I've used this method for estimating my cast on, I have not run up short. My favorite way of doing a long tail cast on is the continental method, but what if you are an English method long tail cast on kind of person? Well, you also have a way of doing the German twist, and I'm going to show you that now. The German twist, doing this English style, is virtually the same as doing it continental style. It's just that the working yarn from the ball is going to be wrapped with your right hand, while your left hand thumb is going to be creating a backward loop to work into. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to grab the yarn with my back fingers. I'm going to take my thumb to the right side of the yarn, create a backward loop. I'm going to bring my needle to the left side of my thumb and underneath both strands of yarn on my thumb. I'm going to bring the needle towards me and down into that loop of yarn on my thumb, right? And I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to bend it down to open up that loop, right? Now I'm going to wrap the yarn from the ball around the needle. I'm going to take my thumb, bring that loop on my thumb around the needle like this, down, and boom. Again in slow motion, with my left thumb, I form a backwards loop. The needle comes up under both strands of that loop, and then I take the needle and I dive it down into the loop on my thumb. And that forms the figure 8. Then with my right hand, I wrap the yarn around the needle. I then bring the loop of yarn over the needle like that and pull it tight. One thing with doing it this way is you don't really have to cock your thumb down the way that I do with the continental method. Let me show you. I bring my thumb around, I'm going to make that backwards loop, bring my needle underneath both strands, down. I then go ahead and wrap my yarn, and then I just kind of twist my thumb up like that before I bring the loop of yarn underneath the strand. So if you have any dexterity issue with your thumb, this might be a nice alternative method to doing the German twist cast on. So that's the English method for the German twist cast on. What you need for a cast on for a toe-up sock is completely different than what you need for a cuff-down sock. Because with a toe-up sock, well, you're starting with the toe. So here are a couple of toe-up sock projects that I have here. This is actually the first sock I ever designed for myself. This is Mosaic knitting. I'm very fond of this sock. I actually started with a short row toe and heel. So I casted on all of my stitches for the foot, did my short row, right? My short rows, formed the toe, worked my way up, and then I came up here and I did a bind off that gave me that stretch and firmness that you need for the cuff. This, oh, I love this sock so much, I can't even tell you. I'm so proud of this sock. This is a toe-up sock. I decided to knit this toe up for two reasons. One, I wanted this pattern here that I did. I wanted it to come right to the tip of the toe and then have it go all the way up. This is a knee-high sock, and I wanted this pattern to go all the way up to the top of the calf of the sock. I love this sock so much, I can't even tell you. So regardless of how you are actually starting your toe on a toe-up sock, whether you're doing something like I did here where you're using a short row and so you cast on all your stitches right from the beginning, or you're doing a little square piece like this, or you're using a wedge toe, because you can start a toe-up sock using a wedge toe. No matter how you do it though, you need a special cast on that's called a closed cast on or a closed circular cast on. What these cast ons do basically is they create two sets of loops of yarn on either side of the cast on edge. There are basically three that I learned how to do early on. There's one that is called the figure eight cast on. There's one called the Turkish cast on, which is so easy. And there's my favorite, which is Judy's Magic Cast On. Judy's Magic Cast On is one of my favorite cast ons of all time. Whew. This is a cast on that is great for starting toes, for socks, absolutely. But this cast on actually works really well as a provisional cast on. And I use this cast on when I'm knitting my medallion circular dishcloths, because it creates an equal number of loops in a provisional cast on, so it makes it very easy to graft when I'm closing that up. But for right now, let's just focus on how you do this amazing cast on. So Judy's Magic Cast On is done with 2 needles held parallel in your right hand. What you do with Judy's Magic Cast On is you alternate forming loops of yarn on needle number 1, then needle number 2. Needle number 1, then needle number 2. That's all you're doing. All right? So let's see what this looks like. Now, how you get started with Judy's Magic Cast On is going to look very similar to the long tail cast on. We're going to be in a slingshot position, and we are going to be working both off a tail of the yarn and off a length of yarn coming off your ball. Here's the thing with Judy's Magic Cast On, however, that's different. For a long tail cast on, you have the tail of the yarn come off your thumb and the working yarn come off your forefinger. Judy's Magic Cast On, it's the opposite. For Judy's Magic Cast On, you're going to have the tail come off your forefinger and the working yarn will be off of your thumb. You can absolutely start Judy's Magic Cast On with a slip knot. I just prefer doing a twist start, and normally I hold both needles in my hand for the twist start. So to do that, here's needle number 1 furthest for me. Needle number 2 is closest to me. I'm going to take the needle, I'm going to put it so the yarn is sitting in between the needle, and then I'm going to just twist that. So I now have a loop of yarn twisted on needle number 1, and I'm all set up. And notice I now have strand number 1 and strand number 2. Strand number 1 is the strand closest to me, coming off my thumb. Strand number 2 is the strand furthest from me, coming off my forefinger. I now need a loop of yarn on needle number 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to form that loop of yarn using strand number 2. So the needle closest to me is going to grab the yarn that is furthest from me. So I'm going to take my needles, I'm going to swing them over to the right side of strand number 2, and then dive my needle number 2 underneath that strand. Notice the strand of yarn is in between the 2 needles. I bring that loop, and boom. I now have a loop of yarn on needle 1 and needle 2. Now I need to form a loop of yarn on needle number 1. So I'm going to swing the needles towards me so that needle number 1 goes behind strand number 1. Notice the strand is in between the needles. Then I twist the needle up, and now I have a second loop on needle number 1. I now have 2 loops of yarn on needle number 1. I now need a loop of yarn, a matching parallel loop of yarn on needle number 2. So what am I going to do? Take my needles, I'm going to swing them over to strand number 2 here coming off my forefinger. Bring that up over needle number 2, loop of yarn. And what you're going to do is you are going to just keep alternating, forming loops of yarn on your needles like this. You just swing back and forth like so, creating alternating loops of yarn. And again, the thing to always remember is the needle that's closest to you is always going to grab the strand that's furthest from you, and the needle that is furthest from you is going to grab the strand that's closest to you. As you create these alternate loops of yarn, you are going to be twisting those 2 strands of yarn underneath. You can't see it right now, but I'm going to flip my needle over, and if you look, you'll see this ridge of purl bumps here. Those are the 2 strands of yarn being twisted together, and this to me is the magic of Judy's Magic Cast On, because it creates a very stable cast on to start working with. When you are casting on for Judy's Magic Cast On is you're going to end up with an equal number of stitches on both needles. So one thing you always want to do when you count your stitches is you want to count after you have completed your stitch on needle number 2 so that you have an equal number on both sides. So when I count, I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I have 17 stitches. I should have 17 stitches on that side, which means I have 34 stitches. But to be sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oh, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, I just miscounted. All right, so I have 18 stitches on this needle. I have 18 stitches on this needle. So I have 36 stitches all together. Now, when you are finished casting on your stitch, this yarn here is very easy to just come off like that. And that would be bad. So to stabilize this, I just take the strand of yarn off and I make a backward loop and I put it on like that. And that locks off this stitch. So now this is all nice and stable. Typically for socks, the toe is knitted in stockinette. So when you start working on this, right, you need to turn these needles in such a way that it keeps this side, where you don't see any purl bumps, facing you. So that when you start knitting, you end up with a nice smooth toe like here. Notice you don't see any ridge along here. This is my cast on edge because I did short row. To make sure I do that, I take my needles like this in my right hand and I flip them over like this. So that before I start knitting, what I am looking at here, this is very important, is no ridge. So this side is the ridge. You want that to the back of the work, and you want this side here on the front. So now with all your stitches cast on, you can start working in the round. what you would do for double pointed needles versus circular needles at this point would differ slightly. If you'd like to see more about that, check out my blog post this coming Wednesday. I'm going to have a video clip that will demonstrate how I would get started knitting the toe of the sock. Those are my two favorite cast-ons to utilize whenever I'm knitting socks. There's one for when I am knitting from the cuff down and one for when I'm knitting from the toe up. What about you? Do you have a favorite cast-on for socks? I would love to hear about it down in the comments below. Also, if you want to have a conversation about this on social media, you can find on my social media down in the description box. I'm very active on Twitter as well as Instagram. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your knitting friends. Sharing my videos, liking my videos lets YouTube know that I'm a space worth checking out, and then YouTube starts recommending me to even more knitters and crafters out there on the interwebs. If you have not already, please make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell, which will let you know whenever I upload a new video. Right now, my stats show that about 75% of the people watching my videos aren't subscribers. You can join the 25% who are subscribers and never miss out on one of my videos. And I am incredibly, incredibly grateful to all the people who have supported my channel over this past year. It's been an amazing journey. It really has. I'm so thrilled by the positive response that I've received and the amazing support that I have heard, and I'm incredibly grateful for all of it. So thank you so much for supporting my channel all this time. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy knitting. Bye. Boy, those last plugs are always tough. Like, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Doo, doo. Today, I'm going to help you get started with your sock patterns, sock projects. Today, I'm going to help you get started with your sock projects by showing you my two assembled. Normally with socks, the toe is knitted, which usually starts with some ribbing so that, you know, they're... my coffee. Because the type of cast on you need for a toe down. Also, at the end of the video, there will be a card and you will see some suggestions for some videos that you can watch after this. So if you're not quite ready to leave me, if you're like, Carrie, I'm having such a great time, I want to keep company with you a little bit longer, don't worry. One of my other videos is about to be suggested. You can always click on it so that you can just keep spending time here at CraftGeek.